We are joined here today. Eric, I got bad news. You're looking So, actually, let me give you the good news. You want to hear the good news first, real quick?
Prefer good news, always.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, before I let you down big time. You're looking fantastic. Not only as always, and again, I should let the viewers know, approximately for Iron Culture, as Eric correctly noted, there's 5 to 10 times more people that listen to the audio-only version, which is understandable. They're missing out on a lot of man-hunk vibes, but that's okay. So YouTube only represents the tip of the iceberg. So for those that are not watching, I'll just say that Eric upgraded his MacBook, and you're now looking HD perfect. So that's the good news. You're looking on point, my man. Delts are looking capped. Chest is looking full. Face chiseled. Chris Evans, he's a budget Eric Helms.
Well, we'll not state who started what. Who originally was seen as copying who and who gets called what. I'm fine with being called Captain America. It's not about who was there first. But I think more importantly, the potential travesty there, I'm happy to stand to the side because I've got other things to do. I can't be in movies. Right. I got to be, talking to you on a semi-regular basis. So I could never have time for that. No. What is a little more of a travesty is what led to the purchase of this new MacBook. It got to the point where I would unplug it and it would just immediately die. Some said, Eric, if you have the same battery in a Mac for 5 years and you do nothing and you don't take care of it, you don't get a new battery, and you really have done everything possible to take bad care of this Mac, it's surprising it's still around. I say stop. I know that you're part of the conspiracy, and I'm not going to name any names, but I'm almost positive. No, I am 100% sure that this was a conspiracy by certain parties. Yeah. I don't want to name them, but certain parties, have done something to my MacBook, and I'm not going to name any names, but it's definitely Greg Nuckols and Eric Trexler.
Yeah, I was going to be a little bit more nebulous with my accusation and say a certain shitty rogue AI, but I think everyone knows what we're saying when we say those things, and there will be a Turing test and there will be an accounting. All I can say, Eric, is that I appreciate what you do in all capacities, and I appreciate our semi-regular, almost like it's one time a week that we talk with one another via this.
Roughly.
Yeah, roughly, via this beautiful service known as Skype. No, we're not endorsed. Now I have to give you the bad news. Now that we got over seemingly some obstacles, the bad news...
the fact that we weren't endorsed by Skype isn't the bad news this whole time? I thought...
Yeah, it's so Eric. Wow, you're really throwing me for a loop here. So there's bad news, and then there's even worse news. So the bad news is we're not endorsed by Skype.
That's terrible.
So we're probably going to have to go on many cams, or we're probably going to have some sort of OnlyFans account. We could talk about that after. We could kind of conceptually create a framework to establish what we want to do with Iron Culture. So that's the bad news. The even worse news.
Omar, real quick before you say that, I don't think we should do anything because this kind of feels like when I got free HBO accidentally as a kid.
Right.
You don't say anything. Right now, I don't know. I'm on Skype. You're on Skype. It's working, and I'm pretty sure Skype. You need an endorsement to use it, right?
Sir Skype. I believe that was the founder's name, and so we just want to give a thank you for allowing them to use this platform to
free usage.
Yeah.
So that's actually very generous. And if it's an accident, please don't report this to Sir Skype.
Yeah. We know Big Brother is watching us, and that is why I must tell you, Eric, that the terrible news, and let's be honest here, it's terrible news. We're not talking about swollenness today. We're actually talking about getting stronger, which is kind of the we're always thinking about getting maximally yacked, and we very occasionally, infrequently, when we're bored, think about getting stronger, and it happens to you and myself infrequently, like we said before. But we have kind of two titans of the modern social media age that have changed the fitness landscape when it comes to powerlifting. We have Jonnie Candito, the burrito, who has been instrumental in terms of elevating the status of the USAPL and the IPF and getting more people interested in powerlifting. And then I would say almost a spiritual successor in ways in terms of exposing a new audience to powerlifting is also then we're joined by Russel, aka Russel Orhii, who is a champion. I think he said 3-time national champion, top level competitor, world record holder, and he probably has, like we say in this interview, one of the best competitive strength sports almost like a mini documentary, behind the scenes look at his championship, which we'll link in the description, that really just helps share. And that's one of the cornerstones of Iron Culture, is the culture, right? The culture of lifting.
Yeah, and fortunately, he's got all the swole we need, even though we are talking about strength, as you can see. I'm just super excited to talk to these two gentlemen, because I think they're both instrumental in what I would say are relatively distinct phases of social media. You know, it kind of started with, your Facebook, which is really just the successful MySpace at the time. It's changed a lot now. And, that's purely a place to type stuff. There was some tweeting going on. There was some Twitter twats, and then also there was, I'm going to record a 10-minute video and then wait 4 hours for it to upload. That was it. So that, I think, in that era, and then slightly after it, Jonnie did a great job with giving more relevance and awareness to powerlifting. And I think passed the baton, and Russ is killing it in the modern age with Instagram and the other formats. And man, like you said, his behind the scenes look, where he's being interviewed between attempts at the World Championships, at the IPF World Competition. I think that was 2018. I could be wrong. I'm getting the year wrong, I think. But nonetheless, it was a really cool insight that I'd never seen before.
No, and so we are honored to have them on today. That is one of the functions. And that's why, really, when we encapsulated, many moons ago, hey, guess what else happened in 2018? The first time we met physically in person and sparks flew. When we conceptualized Iron Culture, where it's science, history, culture, all those, the interconnectedness, and, Iron Culture, as we say, as actually shout out to Bryce Lewis, your, long time boy, who the tagline of it is for all lifters. We want to explore all the different spaces and all the different aspects. So it's really cool to participate, you and myself, and observe at this time what is happening and see how the culture is truly changing. So I think this episode will be very interesting, even if you don't care about getting strong, which we understand.
Yeah, and I think there's some full circle historicalness going on here. Before weightlifting and powerlifting were A, separate sports, but B, even legitimate sports, and being a strong man or strong woman was a vaudeville act and something that people would attend and watch for entertainment. These lifters, who were no doubt lifters and very, very strong, also use that vaudeville platform to promote themselves, to make a living, and to get by. And so it's come full circle now that social media has evolved to where you can be your own platform, that people are doing this. And I think these two gentlemen are a great example of that.
We are joined today by some true titans of powerlifting. We have the new OG, or let's say the OG of the social media age, and I'm sure there are going to be people saying like, hey, I'm 60 years old. I used to compete before these fancy video cameras. I was there on the platform. Where was Candito the burrito? Where was Russel? But it must be stated unequivocally, and I'm the one that's saying it, because guess what? Your boy, I've been on YouTube for 10 years, and I can say that the seismic impact that one Jonathan Candito and Russel, where we'll get into Russel Orhii, has been monumental for the sport of powerlifting. And I first want to put the respect, if I can cast a little light on my man Candito first. Where I first saw you circa maybe 2011, 2012, we had that 4-hour conversation on the phone, man, a few weeks ago. And I truly saw that change that occurred, where before, I belonged to that powerlifting gym, I still do, or strength gym. And there were kind of the old hats that did it one way. And I saw Jonnie, he started growing on social media, putting out fantastic content. He was, I would say, the first person with a larger platform. So we're talking now specifically social media, and probably some of the consequences of it as it relates to powerlifting. How he was talking about the USAPL, he was talking about the IPF, he was talking about Brett Gibbs. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jonnie, but you also have instructed, and people don't know this, a multitude of people, Owen Hubbard, I think actually Brett Gibbs too, in terms of convincing them to even pick up the camera and document themselves. Is that not true?
Yeah, it's true. Actually, what's funny is that there's so I've checked back sometimes, because there's even conversations I had with actually Chad Wesley Smith. Yeah. And what's funny is now his YouTube channel is obviously great. Yeah. And it's like, I was really enthusiastic back then, where I actually looked back at it one time. It was like 5 bullet points and everything. And yeah, I'd like to think some of that helped. I remember actually even talking to Blaine Sumner and basically anyone. And every now and then there would be, which we can get into, there'd be weird conflicts from that. I remember there was one time where people were debating on something so stupid, like something. I mean, it's almost like the t-shirts under the deadlift, one of those things. I remember commenting like, "Look, Mike T's deadlift has 23,000 views. If we could just get this in HD, it was a 4x3 format. That would be more important than all of this." And in the end of the day, a lot of people eventually did change, and then I think that's why we're here today, is that there's just so many people that have kind of developed other skills and rode the wave.
Yeah, and Jonnie, I do want to give that respect to your name, my man, because it's someone, as I could say once again in quotation, an OG on the YouTube space. I know how history can be revised, or people actually forget. Well, we're kind of talking about that a little on the phone, where it's like, you influence people to get into powerlifting, a large swath of individuals who later became coaches, very influential coaches, and then they start coaching athletes. And those athletes now, and we'll talk about that in just 1 second, might not know the sequence of events, where it's like Jonnie was a prime mover here in towards getting, let's say, the average lifter, or those that have some sort of passion into fitness, more serious about powerlifting. So first, just before I go to Russ, I want to give the respect to that name, my man, because I know Jonnie Candito, CanditoTrainingHQ, the impact you've had on YouTube and elsewhere, and just what you've done for proselytizing the sport of powerlifting and the IPF and USAPL. Respect to you. That's what I want to say first, my man.
Thank you. I appreciate it. What's funny too is there's a video, I've actually not looked back at it, but like in 2014, where I remember that I showed the amount of followers on Facebook and on some other platform of the IPF and USAPL. And I almost want to go back to check on, because I'm pretty sure it was like 10,000 or something like that followers on those feds. And now I believe the IPF and USAPL page, they've grown tremendously, even on Facebook, like 200,000, something like that. Which is awesome. But it's a cool time to see everything kind of grow together.
Yeah. And I just wanted to say that because myself and Eric usually talk, on the podcast, we critique capitalism. We talk about sexual health. That's really what Iron Culture is all about. And we'll talk about some of the potential negative consequences of social media. But I think social media and powerlifting has been one of the great success stories. And that's why I also want to shine a light on my man, Russel, who, I'm not going to get into, our personal beef where we settle it over, the bandana. I said, you look great. I look great. We both just look great. But I heard my man was going to send me some Get Better Today crop tops, and they still haven't arrived at my house, so I might be a little salty.
But I'll cut some for you. I got you.
So let me explain how monumental Russ has been to listeners, because once again, we have a large collection, a wide variety of people that listen to Iron Culture for a multitude of reasons. I will say that someone literally uses to explain to me the relevance, I'd say, of my channel at one point in time by using Russ, and this is no joke. That someone went back. There was a video from 2015. When you first started Russ and you're just leaving comments hey, cool video, man, or whatnot. And you left, and so check this out, Russ. I'm not putting on your blast, but it's just the way it is, bro. You left a comment on whatever. It was me and Mike, I'm saying, we're lifting, and you just said, oh, this is a great video, man. This, not like powerlifting looks cool. You just said something, and someone, Russ, I shit you not, in the last 6 months, people watch old videos. They took a screenshot of what you said, from 5 years ago, and said, damn, I can't believe Russ watched you. It's basically implying Russ is the man. Russ is a superstar now. He watched your ass back in the day, and as a social currency. And that is the smallest of reflections on things. Russ, one of the things I really appreciate about you is just how, one, you conduct yourself, my man. I think on social media, you do conduct yourself like a champion. And what I mean when I say that, we all have a little bit of insight into this, how there are some temptations on social media, various ways that you either conduct yourself, or some advertising temptations that you could take. Oh, guess what? I became big. I no longer need to do powerlifting. I'm going to set up a boxing match with my rival, for a 7-figure contract. And you actually are passionate about the sport of powerlifting. I would argue that your crossover appeal, I'm using this very loosely when I say lifestyle. We all know what I mean when I say that. You have a fantastic physique. That your success on social media is not predicated upon powerlifting. I think you can be equally successful if you didn't do powerlifting. And so you use your social media clout to shine a light on powerlifting. So you're actually lifting it up. And I just man, the attitude that you have on social media, kind of the content that you film, and I said it before, how you hold yourself. And as Jonnie told me over the phone, because your boy, I haven't been to a USAPL national meet or any of that stuff, but just how the real world transaction of that, of the impact you have, is in all the fanboys and girls that come up to Russ and think, oh shit, I need a photo with Russ. Where Jonnie literally said that when it comes to the USAPL nationals, is like, you're the top dog. Like he's like, and you know, this is, I'm paraphrasing, and Jonnie, please correct me, my man, if I'm saying anything out of line.
No, it's like by a mile. It really isn't. Honestly, of all classes, it's not even close.
Yeah. So I hope I'm not talking tall tales out of school. So Russ, I just wanted to give respect to you and what you've done for lifting in general, and just being an ambassador of the sport, my man.
No, I appreciate it. I mean, like, just kind of like reflecting back on y'all. Like, I've watched all of y'all. Like, I remember back in the day, like, I'd watch Eric, I'd watch Jonnie, I'd watch you, obviously, because I was leaving comments. But I would say that you guys were a pivotal part of me kind of getting into powerlifting. I was kind of a person that moved away from playing actual sports. So I was just trying to find a way to kind of feed that competitive drive, and watching you guys' channel and kind of like introducing me to strength sports just in itself. It just really helped me kind of make that transition back in the day. So honestly, I just kind of give it up to people like you guys, because you guys have allowed me to kind of lay that foundation for myself. So I really appreciate it.
Bro, and you are just carrying that torch. Before we get started, because I actually want to provide a little bit more background to both you and Jonnie, and we'll kick it off. Eric, I want you, man, if you could just share some of your insight, because you've been, we're talking now through phases. Well, I think Jonnie said his first podcast, first powerlifting, first podcast, he's breaking his chair right now. This is actually Jonnie's first official podcast. So welcome to the Iron Culture. Once you join, you can never leave. It's a small little caveat that we mentioned at some point, I'm sure. But Jonnie did his first meet in 2011. Eric, your first meet was 2006. You've seen this change, and you've coached, guess what, athletes of the highest level at IPF World. Shout out to Bryce Lewis. So you've been to a ton of meets. You've seen the changes over the last 14 years. Can you just briefly comment on your own powerlifting journey and kind of 2006 to now, what people might not be aware of, Eric? If, like, you know, a lot of lifters, let's be honest, they started picking up the iron, maybe a good portion of people here, maybe 2012, 13, 14, 15. They don't even know what it's like.
Yeah, no, I just want to say big thanks to both Jonnie and Russ for being on. And more importantly, big thanks for what you guys have done to bring more people to the iron, which I think is awesome. And to answer your question, Omar, first, thank you. Second, things have changed. And I think change is sometimes resisted, but change is. That's all we can definitely say about it. And I think the output, the positives of change, is that we have a lot more people lifting. And I think that's been a combination of a number of things. Some of them have been a little serendipitous, and some of them have been intentional, like what you guys have both done, which is really important. I think when we had the equipped versus non-equipped powerlifting podcast, and we had the other Bryce, he made a joke about how when he first got into powerlifting, and it was very much the same for me, kind of, it was very West Side influenced. Like, that was the culture. And, you know, and it's not something that Bryce said he didn't relate to. He was like, you know, these guys are talking about, like, they're probably going to die in a bar fight. And he was like, that has nothing to do with powerlifting to me. And when you really think about it, there's no reason it has to do with powerlifting. So I think, like, that culture was big. And I think that gave powerlifting some of its hardcore roots. And that wasn't necessarily even pervasive, but it was the dominant culture in powerlifting. I do think the IPF, the USAPL, even at that time, was a little kind of like, yeah, we're not like the multiply enhanced folks over there. But to me, that was almost a smaller segment at that time. Like, powerlifting was, you know, multiply, no drug testing, we'll die in a bar fight afterwards, and if, you know, it's all good kind of thing. Like, it's all about being hardcore, and I've got dogs chained to my barbell kind of, you know, image. And when I got into powerlifting, that didn't appeal to me. I love lifting. I love the community. And I was lifting raw in meets where it wasn't even a raw division, let alone it being like a raw meet. And that really didn't start popping off. It wasn't the USAPL that started it. You know, if we think about where raw lifting first grew, it was actually, you know, in the enhanced ranks. And, you know, like Raw Unity was kind of the thing where everyone came. But, you know, I would say right around like the turn of 2000, 2010, 2008, 9, 10, that's when all of a sudden raw lifting came out. And I think at the same time, a guy like Jonnie jumps in, who has personality, is intelligent, knows how to do things properly. and understands just simply that having a higher quality video can make a huge difference. You know? And to me, I think, you know, we've talked about this with Jeff Nippard, you and I, Omar, a number of times. People underestimate the value of just making something a little higher quality, you know, and just how much doing that and doing it properly and putting thought and energy to it. Jeff Nippard totally changed the space of what you're quote unquote allowed to do and how you can succeed on YouTube. So I think that really speaks to being intentional and doing things in a way that are appealing. And so I think there's a lot of things at play. Things opened up. You know, YouTube became huge. Lifters got on YouTube. Lifting became accessible all of a sudden, both culturally, in that you don't have to be the guy who is in a biker gang to lift weights now, or you just don't feel like you have to be. And all of a sudden, you don't need to spend as much money on your motorcycle as you do on your squat suit and bench shirt. So now there's raw lifting, and oh, hey, there's this really approachable, down-to-earth dude named Jonnie Candito who I can see and get into it. And I think now we have the same thing. Like, I think, Russell, in your generation, there are a lot more types of people in powerlifting. There's no longer just the super heavyweight white dude, you know, who's lifting, you know, multiply. You know, we have like almost a 60-40 split between men and women. We've got people from other backgrounds. And now, like, if you look at all the top athletes in the USAPL, almost every single one of them was either a former athlete in college and or potentially might even been looking at a pro career. So we're seeing the overall growth of the sport and the visibility and the attractiveness to people with an athletic background. And we're seeing, I guess, the true potential of athletes getting into the sport. We're seeing totals that I did not think were possible, no matter whether you're drug-free or not in certain weight classes. You know, the battles I've seen you do with, you know, Brett Gibbs, John Hack, and we were talking off camera how, you know, a 500 Wilks it was mind-blowing a while ago. And now it's kind of like, people don't post unless they have a 500 Wilks, you know? And so I think that's my perspective, Omar, is that I think the right people who have a passion for the sport, who have a good personality, who pay attention to promotion, coming in at an opportune time when, in Johnny's case, raw lifting also takes off. And in Russ's case, where powerlifting, because of Jonnie, you know, he's kind of saying, hey, I'm going to take that baton and carry it. Now we have a much broader community in powerlifting that is much more representative of everyone who likes lifting. And I think that's resulted in kind of this multi-step, almost exponential growth.
Yeah. No, I think you had, Eric, a lot of great points. And I probably now, so we went at the start, let's say, of this conversation, 2006 or so, when you did your first powerlifting competition. I actually want to kick it off to Russ first, and then we'll peel it back then to Jonnie. So a little bit almost a rewinding of the time. And first, Russ, I want you to tell us your best lifts, your accomplishments in the sport. And then I want you to begin with the Russ story. So kind of connection between you deciding to start doing a little bit more powerlifting, picking up a camera, what that was like, or what the choices were like, how you balance all those things, because none of us, you know, even I could say Russ is the youngest here, no one starts off, it's like, yeah, is it possible to earn a living? Yeah, maybe, potentially. It's like, we're all still navigating this. It's not like, oh, the IPF or the USAPL, it's been around for 30 years where like the top athletes can earn a living at the very least from coaching. It's all within the last several years. So all of it was very new. So first, man, tell me about your accomplishments and then the origin story of Russ and how you decided to go maybe all in or more in when it comes to powerlifting, and then just tell me a little bit about the content you decided to create or how you navigated that realm. Yeah,
for sure. I always feel weird like listing off like what I've done. I don't know about you guys, like, oh, I've done this, you know. But I would say let's just stick to competition lifts. So I think I have the current world record squat in the 83 kg weight class with, I believe it's 691 pounds. I also have a 429 bench and then a 716 deadlift, I believe. And then my world record total for the 83 kg weight class is 133 kg. So I'm an IPF world champion, and then I'm a 3-time Raw Nationals champion in the 83 kg weight class. So, I mean, basically, I'll just go with like kind of like my progression leading into the YouTube stuff. Yeah. So I was actually trying out for football at Texas Tech around this time, or like in 20, I want to say maybe 2015. Patrick Mahomes was actually like that was his first year. So I was at Texas Tech at his first year. And I remember he was juggling baseball and football. So like we would practice and he would come midway. And I'm like, who is this kid? Because at the time there was like a different quarterback and they were battling for the starting position. And they're like, oh, this kid's the truth. And I remember like in practice, like he threw a pass and you could hear it. Like it was like you could hear it whizzing through the air. And I was like, whoa, like this is different. This is way different than what I'm used to. Right. So I looked at the coach, I'm like, wow, that was crazy. Like, yeah, he's gonna be something special. So I always tell that story and like just kind of like to show like where I kind of started my career, right? So I remember, this is a funny story, but I got blowed up in practice. So like I was walking all the time. So like they had us doing like the bitch work. You know, I was doing a kickoff return and this dude just, you know, kickoff return, dudes are just literally just running down to blow someone up. I'm like turning back to go block, right? And then I turn around and just boom, like literally decleated. Like my helmet came this way and my cleat came off. And then I was like, damn. And I remember I called my mom. I was like, yo, Mom, like, I'm not even gonna lie to you. It's different. Like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. So I remember at this time, I'd already been watching YouTube channels. Like, I had been watching Jonnie. I'd been watching, like, people like Bradley Martin, Simeon Panda, Mike Rashid, C.T. Fletcher. Those people kind of helped me morph my body into getting prepared for football. And as I started going to practice more and more, I found myself not wanting to go to practice, but instead of wanting to go to the gym. So I remember I went inside the coach's office. I talked to Coach Cliff. I'm like, hey man, like I'm kind of done with this football stuff. I'm much rather lift weights. And he just kind of looked at me funny. He's like, are you sure? Like you're one of the, because there's 3 people that are supposed to get a scholarship. He's like, you're one of the 3 people that get a scholarship and actually be on the team. I was like, I don't like playing football. So after that, I started working out. If you go like all the way back on my Instagram page, this is back when Instagram had like 15-second videos. I would start filming my entire workout at the Texas Tech Rec Center. I would like literally just ask random people, hey, can you film this set? Hey, do you mind getting this angle right here? Hey, just stand right here and film like this, right? So I did that for a solid couple of months. And then I decided to actually leave Texas Tech, come back home to Houston. And I was doing mostly online classes at the University of Houston. And Alphalete had just opened up. And I'm not the biggest, like at the time, I wasn't the biggest fan of like people like that, just because I was more engraved into like the actual element of lifting weights, right? So I remember I went in that gym and I started working out and I would be there all day. And I would skip classes, skip tests and all that kind of stuff. And I told myself, I was like, I think I'm gonna roll the dice and I'm gonna try the social media stuff out. It was like a weird thing for me to say because I was in school for kinesiology and I was looking at this more of like a thing of experience versus like getting my degree and then getting a job. So I was like, I could flip this social media stuff because I'm able to brush shoulders with company heads that a lot of people with kinesiology degrees wouldn't have the opportunity to do. So that's when I kind of made the leap of faith and I was like, all right, I'm gonna drop out of school. This is what I'm gonna do full time. And like the dominoes just kept rolling at that point. And at this time, I was introduced to powerlifting by a friend that I used to work out with at LA Fitness, and I decided to do my first competition. And it was kind of history from there.
Yeah, and then Russ, let me ask you, man, what year would that be? Your first competition?
I think my first competition was the end of 2016.
Okay. And then what happened with you where you decided, so you were playing football, you got just your cleats knocked off and you're like, Mom, this ain't for me. So then what was it about out of all the various disciplines you could have chosen or paths to pursue? Because I understand also you're passionate about bodybuilding. What was it after that first meet for you that you decided powerlifting is kind of my avenue or that's what I want to pursue? Can you talk to us then about after the first meet and then up until this point in time?
So I've always been someone that's obsessed with lifting as much weight as you possibly can. Like that's always been an obsession of mine. I remember going back to my football days. I was leader of the football like weight room. Like I was like one of the pillars of the team. But when it came to the weight room, the coaches allowed me to have control over the team because I just had an affinity towards lifting weights. So I guess powerlifting was the closest I could get to playing football without actually playing football for me. Like I was already very skilled in bench and squat. The only thing I had to kind of learn how to do was deadlift. So at that point, to me, it was just like, I literally get to train as if I'm getting ready for football and then showcase my training on a platform. So that's the way I looked at it.
And let me ask you, Russ, what have you felt powerlifting has done for you, or you to powerlifting over the last several years? We're like starting from, and that's why I like hearing origin stories, because people kind of see the end result. By the time someone follows you, the average person, you're already a known figure. Like, oh, Russ, he has his own clothing line. Oh, Russ, he's opening his gym. Oh, Russ, he's the national champion. So they don't see kind of this journey. Let me ask you, what have you derived enjoyment, fulfillment, or any of those things from powerlifting that you feel that you might not have from football?
It gives me a sense of purpose, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a different kind of person when I'm inside the gym. Like, I smile a lot when I'm outside, but when I'm inside the gym, I'm very like focused. I'm very serious. It just feeds that competitive nature, that competitive like just drive for me personally. I went into powerlifting wanting to compete against the best lifters. It wasn't more so just, I just want to better myself, But, I came in wanting. I remember at the time when I first started powerlifting, John Hack was the bar. So I'm like, he still is the bar. But I remember I'm like, if I could get on the same platform with this guy, I'm good. Like, that's all I really wanted. So, it just gives me purpose. It gives me a direction for my training. I just can't go to the gym without having an end goal or end result.
I love that level of dedication, and we're going to continue in just 1 second. First, I want to talk with my boy Candito about kind of social media, or like how you starting companies, how that all worked out, where it's kind of interesting, a lot of these origin stories, and even to give a respect to, I think, was Christian Guzman, I honestly forget, was he going to school, was it kinesiology when he dropped out, or no? I honestly don't know what his degree was in.
I'm pretty sure it was something like that, because he was definitely one of the people that told me to drop out.
He's like, it worked for me. It's like, hey, getting a sure degree, Russ? Nah, man, drop out and pick up this camera and just start talking to, you're golden.
Yeah, before you switch over to Jonnie, I remember there was like a very distinct conversation that we had. He asked me, what were my goals? Like at the time, like he's Christian, right? I literally had like maybe like 2,000 followers. And I'm like, I remember having the conversation with him. He's like, so what are you in school for? Like, are you in school right now? And I was like, yeah, like, I'm in kinesiology. He's like, bro, I was in kinesiology too. Fuck that shit. I was like, oh. He's like, bro, drop out, like, do blah, 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 blah. Like, if you ever need any help, I got your back, obviously. And so it was kinesiology. But he was encouraging me. He's like, if you're in school for kinesiology and you have like these avenues available to you right here and right now, like I would chase after these particular avenues right now, and then you could always go back to school. I would have never dropped out of school if I was like there for like something else, like business or architecture or something like we actually need a degree to kind of progress.
Sure. Yeah, and I will give respect to Christian, where you said about that, like watching the various channels, like lifestyle, this, that, is that. I've heard actually many positive stories about him behind the scenes of trying to help out other people. And I think that's kind of honestly one of the common threads here. We're talking, Eric, a bit about social media, but just, illustrating with Jonnie here, kind of like telling people that have no idea about social media, like, hey, Owen, man, pick up the camera, like Brett, like, it's like, what does Jonnie actually from an absolute sense, like just if we're taking it from a utility perspective, is like, what does Jonnie personally gain from Brett picking up? It's like probably the sport of powerlifting in general gets more popular, but the direct impact to Jonathan Candito's YouTube channel or Instagram is negligible. So I actually think a lot of those undercover behind the scenes things are very important. Jonnie, I want to ask you now, because I know all about Papa Candito, okay, the insanely strong dude, getting you into lifting. I first saw you, like I said, 2011, and the thing that appealed to me, besides, it was true, the powerlifting aspect, or the big squat, I remember that, because my squat was always shit. I'm like, oh man, this guy's squatting 500. And I remember the thing that appealed to me about you, man, was actually, I'm going to put in quotations, the athletic aesthetic, where you and your brother Joe, you're doing athletic activities around that time. I'm like, oh yeah, he's, lifting heavy and he's moving around like an athlete. This is awesome. So can you talk to me about someone that was an athlete, you were doing some of those things, your father, all those things kind of coming together, coalescing to then get you into powerlifting? Like, how did that start? So now we had the Russ origin story, which was over the last, let's say, 5 years, which is crazy to think. And now we're going basically a decade back. So hit me up with your story, man.
Okay, so first of all, one of the things that is funny is the order of lifts that I started with are almost exactly the lifts that I'm the worst at. So like the first start, I was doing overhead press a lot, that was the one lift I hated and still hate. And then I was benching and overhead pressing at 12 to 13. But then I didn't squat until like 16, and I didn't pull sumo until like 20 plus. But when it comes to, so lifting started kind of on its own. And I think that really helped is that, my dad was just big into periodization in general and just talking about it, just kind of like the basics. And where that kind of helped is it made it lifting its own thing all the time. So it's like I always saw that something I'd just do for fun. I didn't even think that much about carryover into sports, just a little bit, because I was playing like basketball mostly, which, being a short point guard really isn't going to be a huge advantage if you're slightly more muscular. But I think the moment where it started to tangibly have a positive effect was when I was taking squatting more seriously. And it definitely helped my vertical leap a ton. And it was an interesting situation where I was a long jumper at that time. And basically I was like the exact opposite build of a long jumper, where I was squatting like 465 at like 162, something like that. Like as a freshman or sophomore in college, I'm at like a D3 school. And fun fact, by the way, I actually went to the same college that Mike Zordos went to. He went to Marietta College. He played soccer there. So yeah, which is sort of like random, and it's literally like a few thousand people. Like it's smaller than almost every high school in Houston. Pretty like literally. But what's funny is, so I've had all sorts of these moments that social media wise, I would say one big advantage was I was naturally into really everything I was doing. And I think that's partially why it didn't need an influence. Is like I was literally recording like my pets in my brother's track meets when I was like 12. Like I was like the one in the family who loved like video cameras. And there was actually a time where, this is a total deviation, but there's actually a time where my brother was in a 4x1 and my video camera got that they passed the baton within the legal range. And because of that, they were able to go to regionals just because of that video that I took. So it's like the ultimate incentive to keep recording stuff. But what's funny is I think a lot of people don't know is my first channel was called Power Sprinter. And I uploaded, I kid you not, what's funny is, this is actually the crazy part, is like I got views. Because I remember I uploaded, I didn't show my face. Like it was back then. I kid you not, I did 265 pounds for a set of 6, and it was how to squat. And it was not showing my face, and then it used annotations as the whole tutorial. So it said something's wrong, like don't let your knees go over your toes, like this, that. And I've been running shoes, and it got like 22,000 views, like back then. And I remember, like back then, that was like a huge deal. And I remember that while I was in senior year of high school, I remember someone found out somehow on my track team, and I remember that was like right at the time where I was just super embarrassed, and because I was always like a shy person. So it was like that moment where it's kind of all or nothing. Like, are you just going to like do this, or is it just going to be cringy and embarrassing if you just halfway do it? So basically, I then started Candito training, and I just kind of had to merge kind of two different genres on purpose. So there'd be certain videos, honestly, where I really didn't care for, like incline chest flies, which I remember doing. Because I remember specifically thinking, like, I honestly don't care. Like, I really didn't. And I would just do it just because I knew I had to, because that's the only way to make powerlifting more popular at the time. And I also had a video on, like, could you do cardio and it not negatively affect your strength, and how you could to a moderate level. I just remember after recording that, just, like, hating it. Because I was just like, I just don't care about, like, this is just so generic. But I just had to. And those videos, were good to do, because then I could gradually flip the switch. And then as people started knowing more, it honestly is way more enjoyable, because now it's just, okay, this is what I cared about the whole time. What's funny is I actually did have a cheeky post where I was basically saying how, like, my goal for my channel is to make it to where Powerlifting gets to a point where I'm no longer that good at it. And it's just like, it's way too real how it's like, because that was my goal in like 2014, where I was like, because I knew that if more people get into this, I was always realistic. Like I was always realistic that if more people get into this, there are going to be outliers who are going to be much better than me. The sport does not have that many people in it. But I would say another specific fact that I don't think I've ever said publicly is one of the only reasons I got into powerlifting was because I looked at the qualifying totals. I Googled powerlifting, and this is 2010. And I looked at the qualifying totals, and I saw the single ply totals, and I thought that was raw totals to qualify. So it was one of those where it was like, and it was like, I was like, okay, I'm in there. And I realized, like, if they had it separately, if I saw the raw ones, I wouldn't have done it, because it would have been too easy. So it's like that challenge making going to nationals kind of cool. Then I got second place out of 3 in like a T3 division. And then, yeah, basically from there, I eventually won junior 83 kg Nats at like the last year, where it was just like totally normal. It was like 14 something total. I remember it was really bad meet too, because I told 15:05 at I think it was like at Worlds, and then at Nationals, yeah, it was a month later. I did like way worse, so like 14:50, and it still won Nationals. And that was just dead on the last year where you could do that. But yeah, so I'd say overall, now it's a lot easier, because now you can just focus on the powerlifting community. There is a community, and there are way more people with like 100,000 followers. I think that's something where I'm like a big advocate for too, because I've talked with some people who are really pessimistic. I think that's like the consistent theme probably between both Russ and I, is I think we're both very optimistic. And we see it's like there's a lot of people who will say like, oh, powerlifting's just for people who drop out of this sport or that sport, or people who aren't good enough to make it as a bodybuilder or whatever. There's a lot of people who have that negative mindset. And even as the sport's grown, there's still people who have kind of a negative mindset. They're like, oh, why should people make money? And then look at what the meet that Russ was going to do if it wasn't for Corona, would have given out thousands of dollars. Like everyone will say it can't be done until someone just pushes to see why not. And that's kind of, yeah. And that at one point in there, I went to Olympic Training Center for a month, because I have that mentality where I'm like, I literally posted on a T Nation thread that said, can I make the Olympics? And posted my squat. I kid you not. Can I make the Olympics? Because because it was at the time where I was like, every Olympic lifter I was following, I'm like, I'm stronger than, like, can I do it? And I got a shit ton of hate. It was like a 500 or 515 squat at like 168. But the funny thing is then I went to Olympic Training Center, the only one that's connected with the university, at Northern Michigan University, and there are 4 total Olympic Training Centers. Colorado is the best one, to be clear. So even at there, I was the strongest one for my body weight. So it's like Americans suck that bad at weightlifting. It's basically the end point.
I like sometimes I talk with Jonnie, because you're legitimately one of the few people, man, that I can reference literally anyone on YouTube or social media, because essentially we came up within a few years of each other around the same time, that like Jonnie just gets it and he knows the references. It's like, oh, I know this person, that person. There's a few people that I want to mention quickly that I know when it comes to YouTubers that you've had an impact on entering powerlifting, and that is, just to give everyone listening some of those examples, would be Nick Wright, 100%. Chelsea Lifts, when Chelsea used to post and had kind of powerlifting content, and she was a force. She's representing a lot of women out there. Meg Squatch, just like kind of your presence overall. I want to just give you a consolation prize, though, Jonnie, very quickly, about T Nation, and that is that no matter what, on T Nation, Russ, did you ever post on T Nation? Yes or no? Just before I go on.
No, I never post on, but I would keep up on like certain things.
Yeah. So this is a circa T Nation, I think, for John and myself, before, or maybe around, for me it was before Anaconda, before, I'm going to say in quotations, they jumped the shark, where that's kind of one of the places, like Eric knows, bodybuilding, the forums.com, the forums. So I was just going to say, your consolation, if you said that everyone trashed you or whatnot for your squat, like, can I make the Olympics or whatnot, is years ago, so this is over a decade ago, my first year lifting, where I got fat and then I lost weight. At the time on the T Nation forums, there's these guys, there's this Jack dude, Professor X. I'll give an example. Like, I know all of them. I remember all the names, but they had a rate my physique. Eric, you'll find this funny. And so you post your physique, and they'll like rate it out of 10, and they'll say like, oh, like good transformation, need more biceps, or like whatever, right? And so my username on it was Vodka and Lamb, because that's just who I am. They best represent me, those two qualities. And I'd lost like whatever. I went from like the 220 down to like 170. That's where I blew up. I went from 145 to 220 in 8 months. Then I lost within 4 months or 5 months, 50 pounds. And I wanted some point. So at the time, like, it's my first year lifting. I wanted, because I did respect some of the people in the forum. Like there were like, it kind of, once again, your guru was like the person leaving comments in that forum. And yeah, I got like a 6.7 or something on the like rated out of 10, the transformation. And like no one really had any constructive feedback. Like, hey man, so yeah, it looks like maybe your first year lifting, your shoulders are developing. There's like, yeah, it's okay, or like whatever. I was like, okay, cool, sick. So that to see that Eric evolve from that point to this point has been amazing. One question for Jonnie before I pass it over to Eric, because I know there's a lot of great insights here, and we could take this conversation in a variety of different ways. Can you talk to me, because I ask you this, Jonnie, since you were there basically when you had a larger following than the IPF by a large amount, and just you participated. What out of curiosity, do you know how many people were at your first Raw Nationals? Like roughly, like competitors, roughly maybe.
Ooh, that's a good question. Man, that's a really good question. I know for sure it was not over 300.
Okay.
I know for sure it's like capped at 305 at most. I'm thinking, yeah. See, the thing is, I actually think Raw Nationals it took off really when they went to the 1,000 mark, which that's one of the things that is weird is there's kind of like this delayed effect, whereas like it was growing. Then there's like that 2016-ish area where a lot of people, I think it's like a lot of people who kind of watched online content, kind of were into it, actually did it, where it really exploded. Because I remember when I did IPF Worlds in 2015, they said it was the biggest meet ever at 808, and then now Raw Nationals like 1,300. So it's actually kind of weird that it's like it went from 300 to 800, and then it's like continuing that lump of like 500 plus. And I think if they wanted to, they could get to like 2,000 plus if they really didn't care. But yeah, I would say that was the mark. And one thing I do want to add, by the way, is like I remember on T Nation forums, like there were people who would legitimately argue with me like all day on this, would argue that powerlifting will never be popular, like enthusiastically argue and like come out, yeah, like full video, like YouTube videos of like grown men, like bald head 40-year-olds, like arguing. I remember I was just so mad. I'm like, you are going to be right. Like I felt such a personal need to prove that. Just on the basis that you could Google bench squat or deadlift and it gets tons of results. That's really the core of why I always believe, like, I think Raw Nationals could get as big as they want, or they could do a CrossFit type thing, or like I would say, like a high school setup where you have like districts, regionals. I honestly do not see a real cap on this sport that has to be like 10,000. I think it could be 100,000 or 150,000.
That Jonnie, that's why you are the ambassador for the sport. And you said in the previous one where we had the round table, you're like, I'm doing this for life, man. I want to be like, I think you said like a university, a college coach. Like I want to be the announcer for the USAPL. I believe that. Jonnie, we will make that happen. Final question before I kick it off to Eric, and that is, I remember, I think either you shared with me personally, or maybe I saw it online somewhere. But can you talk to me about your first few years of sharing your lifting online at powerlifting meets, where the kind of like what you had to do, you had to smuggle. So this is before, let's say, the Russ era, where like, you have how many of the 83 kg lifters are bringing out of their phone or like their cameras or like their girlfriend or their handler are holding the camera, and everyone, like, it's a known thing that there's 100 cameras, or maybe, let's be honest, 300 cameras if we include phones out there filming this event. Jonnie, when you did it, if I remember, when you first started, it was not a taboo to bring out, your camera, but it's kind of like, all right, I gotta sneak this shit, like, and you, not that you had to justify it, but weren't there some like old heads that would watch this, like, sir, what are you doing here? Like, you want to film, like, you want to help spread the word about our sport? No, you can't do that. Can you just talk to me about the first few years of like that kind of awkward phase, man, of like filming and trying to present this content at these meets?
Yeah, there was actually a specific thread once where the Priscilla was in it, who still runs the USAPL, and someone tried to get, and she's really nice. I think, Russ, you've talked to her at times, right? Like, she's just super cool with like everyone, with all of us, really. But I remember someone tried to like gang up on me with her because I said something about video quality, and they literally tagged like Blaine Sumner, Priscilla, this and that, and they're like, what? So they don't run it well enough? So their stream's not good enough? Like that, yeah, like literally to that level. And I'm just, there definitely was, I think, the trickiest dynamic, and it's like any time where you have outlier situations is you have to make sure there's not too much jealousy or that sense of like, I think I'm better because I have followers or a camera or this or that. And I think that's something where it's actually really peaceful and kind of calming to know that, okay, super strong people now have a lot of followers, because there's almost this like uncomfortable sense with that. So I'd say overall, honestly, the people in person, I think the thing with powerlifting is it's always this story, is in person, people really don't have too many issues. It's always like, actually my first meet I've ever done was ran by Jen Thompson, by the way. So she's always like super supportive. Like, so it actually was like a pretty good situation. And it was the only meet where I truly had a bad experience was 2012 Nationals. I bombed out, and it was in Killeen, Texas, and they were just absolute dicks. Like, checking in, it was like they were mean. They're just like why is there chalk on your stuff? What's up with that? Like, come on, get that. Like, really, like just looking at you, like staring you down, to where I'm like, I don't know why I'm being treated like that. I don't want to do this. That was like my third meet. So that was actually the one meet where I honestly did consider maybe not doing it. Like, that was the one meet where I'm like, yeah, I traveled with my dad for hours. I mean, from Ohio to Killeen, Texas, literally just missed 3 squats, and that's it, and get treated like shit from my perspective. And I actually still don't like the meet director who runs that. And if you're in the USAPL, you know who runs meets in Killeen, Texas, because there's only one, and it's because he lives in Killeen, Texas. That's the only reason they would do that. But yeah, otherwise, I actually will say that a lot of people I think people at meets believe in it. And I think that's the difference. Is a lot of the negativity, like I'm sure, Eric, you experienced probably similar things in bodybuilding, right? Where it's like a lot of that negativity is totally online. And then you go in person and it's like, look, people have done, they put themselves out there. And even some people there, you'd be surprised. There's some people in 2012 who'd still have videos on like lift.net, and we do like competitions where I deadlifted 405 for 11, I think, on conventional, like all out. And it's like there's still that community atmosphere. It's just nobody really brought the quality. I think that really was it.
Yeah, I there's so much I can echo with that experience. And to the credit of some of the like the USAPL, like you were talking about, that initial maybe attitude changed. And I think it's probably because you eventually made it clear to them, or they saw what was in your heart, that you were trying to benefit the sport. So big shout out to Bob Bell and Tina Smith, who run the WNBF. That's the World Natural Bodybuilding Federation and the International Natural Bodybuilding Federation. And they weren't even the heads of that organization at this time, but a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away called California, myself and 3 other dudes with borderline eating disorders started 3D Muscle Journey. Yeah. And, what we tried to do originally was not start an online coaching business. Our goal was to document, promote, and build natural athletes up. So we were going to every powerlifting meet and every natural bodybuilding show, like in the greater like West Coast area, for years. And we would interview overall winners, best lifters, guys who won the pro card, gals who won the pro card, and go there with digital cameras, because phones were just things you played Snake on, besides when you're making phone calls at the time, and take them. And I remember we got in trouble for taking pictures at the big bodybuilding show that everyone knows now, that is the Natural Muscle Mayhem, because we were basically undermining the photographer who was there. And we had to apologize, we had to make it right. We were sharing it on a website as a blog. And at the time, I just don't think people understood where things were going. Like, that's actually how we're going to grow the sport. But fast forward 5 years later, and the same people who we got in trouble with for filming at that show or taking pictures awarded us as a coaching team an award for coaches, for bringing people to the show, for coaching athletes, and for also promoting the sport of natural bodybuilding, if you want to call it a sport. So I think to the credit of some of the people involved, they have grown. And I think, like you said, Jonnie, the difference between someone having a good experience and not could be the death of an entire possible, like YouTube channel, or someone trying to grow it. Like, if you had if you decided, like, what, this experience I had at Killeen was not worth it. I don't like these people. This is a bad crew. This isn't a community I want to be a part of. There may not have been a whole lot of other people who then picked up the torch and passed it on. And so I think, for example, I remember seeing, I think it was the first time you were asked to be an announcer online for the online stream of USAPL Nationals. And I was like, that's awesome. Like USAPL is not missing something here. They're seeing the value in this, and that's where the community growth is growing now. You know, it's not just this weird niche sport where you see a dude in the gym and he's walking up the bench like this, and you're like, what are you doing? He goes, let me tell you about powerlifting. You know, and for everyone listening and not watching, I was showing what it looks like to be in a bench shirt, which kind of looks like you just got hit in the chest with a Hayuka and you're flying back and you're paused. But anyway, so now that it's been growing online, I think the organizations that are around and thriving and the ones that are now dominant, they didn't get in their own way enough for that growth to occur. They invited you, you know, they put the hand out and they said, hey, we love what you're doing. And I think that's a really, really important thing. And I still think we can improve. Like speaking of bodybuilding, like when I've talked to the heads of different organizations, sometimes I will point to the USAPL and I say, hey, look at what they're doing, you know? And I'm sure it goes on more than that. I'm sure both Russ and Jonnie could think of more things that USAPL could do organizationally to help grow the sport. But I agree, there's no reason why squat, bench, and deadlift shouldn't grow a lot. I mean, if weightlifting is blown up, which is a much higher barrier to entry. You know, we just had Max Ada and Greg and Amy Everett from Catalyst Athletics on, and they were talking about how, you know, if you look at the mission statement of Catalyst Athletics, it's to grow weightlifting, very similarly to what you want to do. But they have a much larger challenge. You know, they had to find, like, even with social media, you'd be like, great, I want to do that. How do I do that? Oh, there's no weightlifting gym around here. And if it wasn't for CrossFit, that there would be nothing to capitalize on. So I think it's the convergence of a lot of factors. It's the ease of availability of squat, bench, and deadlift, combined with the fact that now you don't have to pay, you know, the entry fee of a katana and an Inzer squat suit to get in, you know, and the fact that you're there, and the fact that the organizations are supporting it. So yeah, I would love to ask you the question, Jonnie. How have you felt that? How did it feel to when you started to get recognized by the organization itself, and to have you be like, yeah, we like what you're doing, when initially it was a little more like, hey, you saying we're not running things right? What was that transition like?
You know, it's actually surprisingly good. And I think it's totally to your point that if it wasn't good, I mean, honestly, who knows whether the passion would be there. But I remember there was specifically a moment, it was at 2014 in South Africa, whereas like that was right at where it's becoming clear. You know, it's probably like right around when I got 100,000 followers, I think 2014, 2015. At that moment, I remember Rob Schmidt, he worked as the marketing guy for the USAPL, and he literally went up to me and he's like, thank God finally, like, one of those guys online is like one of us. Because there's like right when there was like Mark Bell, and that was right. There was a time, and this is not throwing him under the bus, but there was a time when Mark Bell like would legitimately basically not have IPF guys on. Like, and IPF guys noticed, where they're like, okay, so it's like just nobody other than kind of more West Side type guys. And I mean, now you can't avoid IPF guys, you know. But I would say that there was also a really cool moment where Gaston, the IPF president, where he basically, like, he personally wished me well on my broken toe from the sumo deadlift. And what's funny is, like, I was talking to him, and they like just started their Instagram, because this was 2015, and this was like right before they took it seriously. And they had Twitter, and they were like, they tweeted me, and I didn't see it because it's Twitter. Like, who cares? So what's funny is it was Gaston and his assistant, and I literally told him, I did tell him that. I was like, look, Twitter honestly is not really taking off. Like, I had like 3,000 Twitter followers at the time. Like, I'm pretty sure either my thoughts are just real trash right now, or this isn't it. And I told them specifically, I'm like, look, you should post more on Instagram. Like, it is definitely the way to do it. And they listened. Like, they really listened. And obviously, you know, you can never bring causation to anything, but it's like they were willing to hear me out. And then I've had other situations where I've actually edited videos for a specific brand that actually still exists within powerlifting, which is funny, but it's not particularly big. And I was editing videos, and I was like, look, I think we could get these videos at least 4,000 views, because it was like a 600-pound bencher, 600 plus, natural too, like USAPL. There was a turning point where he wanted an equipped lifting bench, and it was like, okay, like one, and then the next one was equipped lifting, and I just had to say, like, look, I don't believe in this, like, as far as honestly, as far as getting views. And that's fine if you want to do it. And then they went that route, and it never worked as far as traffic. And so there are those moments where it's like, look, if you don't want it, like if you don't want to make that switch, or like let's say with Russ's situation, like if he didn't keep up with the bodybuilding to the same level, it's like there would be a certain fall off of a section where you can really bring everyone in.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's a good point. Like sometimes I think of equipped powerlifting. It's about as like relatable as like pole vault, you know? It's like, okay, they're jumping, but they're using the stick. It seems like there's some complicated physics involved. That's kind of interesting. They'll put it on the weird wide world of sports, but it's absolutely not the same thing as, oh, I did that in the gym yesterday. Dang, that's inspiring. You know, I want to do that.
Yeah, so. I'd also like to add something that Omar brought up off camera was Russ being opinionated on the Thor video, and how that got, you know, realistically that probably single-handedly kind of carried it views-wise to have someone just have an opinion. I also think that was a huge part early on. Is like not many people are like, look, I think drug-free is better. I think a lot of guys are drug-free. I don't believe that everybody is on steroids. When Louis Simmons says that everyone who takes it seriously is going to be on drugs for the rest of their life, I think that's wrong. I think that's completely wrong. And I have some friends who are IPF guys who love Louis, and I tell them that quote. I'm like, you're drug-free. He just said if you were serious, you wouldn't be. And then they kind of excuse it, but it's like sometimes it takes the guy who really cares on a literal level to say, look, the IPF's the best federation, in my opinion. Just the best. And if there were some of these other federations, I wouldn't do this. And sometimes having that opinion, sometimes it's just too divisive. But a lot of times if you know you're right, and I think you're willing to kind of back it up and support people who do it, it can make, you know, a real impact. Because there are a lot of people who think that stuff who never say it. Yeah.
No, I Jonnie, I think it's a really good point, and I want to provide more nuance to that perspective from my perspective, because I know so much of what path you take in lifting is dependent upon your entrance and that community's expectations, thoughts, and what they think the lifting culture is. Like a lot of the people I know who are enhanced in bodybuilding, powerlifting, weightlifting, they came up in a gym culture where that was just what you do. And that was what they believed. The same kind of thing Louis said, that if you're serious, you do that. It's just a question of when and to how much do you take, right? Yeah. And you see that reflected in the bubbles that are created both online and in person. And I think even if you could position that, like you said, as divisive, I don't necessarily think it may be divisive in that certain people are going to be like, yeah, Jonnie's not my guy. But I think from a perspective of getting people into the sport, it's only helpful, because the people who do believe that, want to go that route, they're going to go into the untested federations. They're going to go into the kind of the multiply world, and that's fine, all good. But that was the only voice when I was in it. I felt like I had to be an iconoclast. People looked at me weird, like, why aren't you getting a bench shirt or a squat suit? And I'm like, no disrespect, but that's not me. That doesn't, like, I started as a bodybuilder, was interested in strength, and I did my first powerlifting meet before I did my first bodybuilding show. Like, I was always interested in lifting, and I'm not saying it's not impressive. It shouldn't be considered part of the iron game. It absolutely should, to be lifting in multiply or single ply. And I probably will do it one day, just because I like to explore every nook and cranny of the iron game. But it just didn't feel like what I would want to do. And I had to enter it understanding that I had to be intrinsically motivated, because I wasn't going to get in a squat suit or a bench shirt. And like at the time I was competing in very small local federations, and I had no idea what records were. And 2 years into it, I'm like, oh, I'm almost a class 1 lifter. Like I'm totaling 1200 at 198. I'm pretty good. If I put on a bench shirt and a squat suit, I could actually like set some state records, because there was like 5 people in the whole federation or whatever. So at that time, it just was so unappealing to me that I had to go, right, I'm just going to do this for me, which I think was a good thing. But there's a lot of people who didn't have that perspective, and there wasn't a Jonnie Candito voice in 2006 or 7. And I think the fact that you did have those opinions, you did share that voice, sure, that might turn off some people, but there was literally hundreds of thousands of people who were like, oh, you can do powerlifting that way? I didn't even know. So I think, to give you credit, I think it could create division online, but in terms of what does it actually do for powerlifting, I think it's bumped the numbers up.
Yeah, what's funny is that
I just wanted to add really quick. I remember before I even did my first meet, I was at the U of H, University of Houston powerlifting team. It was their first year. The coaches were kind of like more OG, and they're trying to get me introduced into equipped lifting. And I remember they said something like, "Hey, have you ever tried jumping into a squat suit or a bench shirt?" I was like, "What's that?" I was like, "Oh, like essentially it'll just help you push more weight." And I literally thought in my head, like, no offense to anyone that does equipped lifting, but I was like, that's fucking stupid. Like, because from my perspective, like, why would you want to use a piece of equipment to lift more weights? Like, wouldn't it just be cool to kind of do it yourself, right? So that was my mindset going into it. And I feel like that's a sentiment that a lot of people outside of powerlifting share. It's like, yes. I would watch videos, like I would watch the West Side crew or whatever, and Mark Bell, and like they were in squash suits and bench shirts. I literally just, once again, excuse my ignorance, like I'm not an equipped lifter, but I'll just dismiss whatever lift that they had help in a suit with. Like I'm just like, I mean, who cares? Like, what can you do physically by yourself? And that's always the approach that I took from, like, I remember when I got into powerlifting, I didn't use a belt, I didn't use knee sleeves, I didn't use wrist wraps, because I had that belief of like, what can my body do with the least amount of equipment possible? Like, what can it do? When you add in those different elements into your strength, to me, that's not your pure strength. And that's the way I've kind of like always viewed it. No offense to like any equipped lifters. It's not like throwing shots, but that's just how I came into it. And just like my viewpoints when I first started lifting. And I think that's something that a lot of lifters share. And I think that was a huge barrier that kind of kept people getting into powerlifting, because it's like, what's the point of wearing a suit? Like, what's the point of wearing a bench shirt? Like, if I could just come in and just come as I am and lift, I think you'll have a lot more people willing to jump into the sport.
Russ, if I may, I don't think you need to excuse your ignorance, because everyone, when they're exposed to something new, starts from a place of ignorance. You know, ignorance is like the birth of knowledge, right? And you probably have a more nuanced view of it now. You can think, oh, well, some of these dudes, I've seen them compete in single ply and raw. Okay, if they can squat 1,000 there, they're probably putting up 800-900. You know, in a raw, like, you know, Blaine Sumner. It's not weak if you take him out of the single ply, right? So like you understand that now. Yeah. But just like anything, you would have to learn that, because if you're just someone who's only been in a weight room and you get exposed to it, like, what the hell is this? You know? And that immediate "what the hell is this" response is why equipped lifting is so difficult to make huge. And Jonnie, that's why grown ass men, bald headed, who are 40 years old, were getting on, you know, like recording crappy, you know, YouTube videos in 2012 to argue with you, specifically because that to them is what powerlifting is. It's a niche thing. It's not mainstream. And I think even with the rise of USAPL nationals, that just wouldn't get through, because for them, for maybe since the 90s, that's what powerlifting had been, and they never expected it, nor did they think it, nor did they, if they were honest, they didn't want it to grow either. Yeah. Oh yeah. I think a lot of people in these niche sports and niche communities, because I used to be this way when I was a long time ago. I was into underground hip hop. I still am into it, but I was actually making music, right? Yeah. And the level of elitism I had, like if something got on the radio, all of a sudden the lyrical quality would be down 2 points, you know? So like, I remember when I had a really tough time because I was listening to Eminem. I became aware of him after I'd already been rapping. And when I first got exposed to his stuff, it was some of his shit on like Raucous Records with Mos Def, and you guys don't know what the hell I'm talking about, but some of his early stuff before he was with Interscope. And he was really amazing. And then when he got on like the mainstream radio, I had like this cognitive dissonance. I'm like, okay, you're not underground anymore, but you're still just as good. But you can't be just as good because you're on the radio. So I think anytime you're basically a hipster about something, which, if we're honest, in the early 2000s, the 90s, while powerlifting was an underground sport, it was a bunch of hipsters who looked like bikers. I mean, that's essentially what it was, you know? Like, yeah, we have this crazy squat suit, we have this, and I'm not throwing shade. Like, I really, really do appreciate the history of the sport, where it came from, where it went, and I think the equipped world has just, the people who do that, knowing that it's niche, putting everything into it, risking their health, and just to lift more. I think some of that is a key element to what makes powerlifting and all the Iron Game amazing. But I do get how some people actually see what you guys are doing, whether they want to articulate it or not, as a negative. Like, how dare you take my little piece of the world and make it mainstream, you know? So actually, that's a question I want to ask you, Russ, because you're the newest strong boy on the block, at least on this call. Have you had any lashbacks? Have you had people who have treated you as though what you're doing is disrespectful to the roots, or you're not giving the right kind of love or the appropriate amount of respect to, like, have you gotten any unexpected criticism?
No, I mean, not really. I think the biggest pushbacks that I've had in meets is just the fact that I have kind of pushed the limit of what you can record and how you can record back in the warm-up room and like out in the platform. I have like a camera guy with me at all times, so it's like a little bit of a hassle sometimes, especially like last Raw Nationals. The most recent Raw Nationals, we actually had to. I'm like in between attempts, like arguing with different people. It's like, no, like this is my guy, like he has a pass to be here, blah blah blah. Like we're arguing different things as I'm in between attempts, trying to make sure that he's able to stay and film for my YouTube channel. I think that's probably the biggest things. But in terms of like the older people kind of accepting me, I've always been someone that gives homage to the OGs first. Like I'll go up and talk to, hey man, like how do you maintain this level of performance over the course of time? Like help me out. I've always been that kind of person that kind of gives it up to them. So I think that they've kind of embraced me with open arms. Like whenever I go to meets, the older guys are just kind of very receptive to me. But I will say it's kind of funny with Priscilla. She was trying to gauge if I was like someone that was just trying to pimp the sport. I think that seriously, yeah. I think that a lot of people initially, like they didn't know me. I think it was like my first or second Raw Nationals. They just didn't know how to receive me because I'm not. If I'm being frank, I'm not like a powerlifter through and through. I'm kind of like a hybrid. Like I do like elements of bodybuilding, I do like elements of social media, but I think powerlifting kind of has like the biggest percentage. I do like a lot of different things. So they're looking at me as like, oh, you're just here to compete. You don't care about the community, like blah, blah, blah. You're just taking from us, but you're not giving back. So whenever I first started coming around, it was more so like a hesitance to speak to me. It was just kind of like ignoring me, trying to make sure that, I guess I don't have like a big head or whatever. So it'll just be like little slights here and there. But I think over the course of time, they've realized that I'm trying my best to bring as many people into the sport as possible. So I think other than that, man, I try to give it up to the OGs. I try to show love to them. So I don't think I've had too much of a pushback. If anything, it would just be those things that I mentioned beforehand, just with the filming stuff.
Well, that's good to hear. And I actually did want to talk about the filming. I'm going to say backstage, but that's the bodybuilder in me coming out. In the warm-up room, I should say.
In the pump-up room, Eric.
In the pump-up room, right, where you do singles with 80% to pump up. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess it sounds like, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, Russ, like you kind of get it. Like you are new on the block, you are popular, they're unsure what you're trying to do with that. Are you really about the powerlifting life? And that they came around, which ultimately I think you must have proved something, and I personally think your positive impact is pretty apparent. And maybe I relate to it because I've been in your shoes where initially it was kind of like, what are these guys doing with this number and then 3 letters afterwards and posting on the internet, So it was just like the 2009 version of what you're experiencing now or did experience. That is one thing I wanted to ask, because the first time I saw, I think it was either your first or second Worlds appearance. You recorded your whole experience. You were talking between attempts, and and I was thinking, man, that's impressive. Like that, to be able to get in the zone and then get into I'm content creating, then get back in the zone and then I'm content creating. And I was thinking that's got to be hard to do. But that was my perspective at Worlds. And I know a lot of the audience doesn't know this. If they've never been to Worlds, you'd think like there's nationals and it's crazy. Oh my God, 1,000 people. And then Worlds, it's got to be another level. Worlds actually feels a lot more like a small region meet because it's tiny. You know, like it travels around the world, and it's only a handful. It's only the teams from the U.S. in each one of the countries. And there's a lot of countries involved in powerlifting, but it's not that many. And also, it's over like a week and a half. You know, if you look at all the different divisions and everything. So like any given day, if you were to turn the camera around and look at the audience at World Championships, like I was there both in Calgary and also Belarus, and it's a very modest number of people to show up. Like Worlds is chill. So how is it? I know I was wondering that must be stressful at Worlds, but how is that at Nationals? What Nationals is?
I honestly love Raw Nationals. Like that's if you're listening to this, you haven't been to Raw Nationals, I'd suggest that you go. It's very, very fun. So it's interesting to. I never, like, you actually brought up a great point, like, to have a camera in your face when it's pretty much game day and you're in between attempts and you're updating your YouTube channel for this is strictly for the viewer. Like, I don't have to do this shit, you know? And it's just it's a weird element where, okay, I have to come out of the zone, speak. I literally just missed 2 squats. I'm like, oh, shit. And then, then go back to focusing on, okay, I need to execute, right? So I think it's a lot of fun. The interesting part is for me, what I've experienced is whenever I'm at Raw Nationals, whenever I compete, it's a lot of pressure because there's just a shit ton of phones in your face, like every attempt, and you get kind of used to it, you know. So I'll say the drop off between Raw Nationals, just kind of like expanding that conversation. But whenever you're in Raw Nationals, you have like such a high energy environment, right? And you're going in between sets, you're like, okay, I did pretty good on my first attempt. We're gonna go back and see how the second attempt goes. And then when it gets to IPF Worlds, it's a little bit more regal, it's a little bit more serious. There's not a lot of people in the back room, and there's definitely a lot of people in the stand. So it's more. You just have to create your own little bubble to where you're able to kind of like make things happen. I would say that to me, it hasn't been too much of a crazy thing to do to talk in between sets and things of that nature, because that's how I came into it. And I still view the actual sport of powerlifting as just something that I've done always. It's just me now showcasing that on the platform itself.
I think that, honestly, I think that probably speaks to that competitive drive you have. I think you have a lot of well-earned confidence. Obviously, you're a high-performing athlete, and I think people love to talk about genetics, but they're not very good at talking about people who are able to perform, get it together, and objectively evaluate themselves. And that's one of the things I've seen coaching across sports in the Iron Game, is that you might have a lot of talent, but if you let your emotions override your ability to, in the moment and afterwards, and then for the future, prospectively, retrospectively, and in the moment, evaluate, objectively, with some degree of objectivity, how you're doing, what you need to do, what you did wrong, you're not going to go very far. You're going to make poor attempt calls. You're going to get injured. You will or won't do enough. You're going to piss off the wrong people. You're going to get yourself into hot water. All those things. And I do think it's impressive, and it's also cool for people to see what it's like to be in that area, in that part of the sport, because people typically only see what happens when you come around the curtain and get on the platform, and then people talking about it in retrospect. So I thought that was a really cool thing that you do, and I'm mostly just impressed that you don't see that as negatively affecting you, because I know a lot of athletes who would. I was watching The Last Dance, and this is like the early 90s through the late 90s, and there was only like a couple of athletes in the NBA who were getting that level of attention. Like, they'd have all the cameras in their face, be surrounded by people, before the social media age. Again, this is before Nokia and playing Snake. This is, these phones, that you can carry around with you. And Jordan was like, everyone gets to play basketball, but I have to deal with this. I have to switch into MJ mode and talk to people at the halftime or before and after the game and stay professional enough to not lose my sponsors. And that was not something he asked for. And just to see you go like, yeah, that's my business model. I'm going to do that intentionally. I think this is good content. This will bring people to the sport. and seemingly not be negatively affected from it, and maybe even thrive from it. You know, 'cause it seems like you do well under pressure and with an audience, and it hypes you up. And I don't want to put words in your mouth. I just think that's people may or may not like it, but I think it gives a unique insight into A, the mindset you're able to achieve to perform well, and B, into an aspect of powerlifting that's typically doesn't show up on social media, which I think is cool. So
yeah, I think another aspect to that also is just like you put certain expectations on yourself, and if you have confidence, like it's weird. Like I remember one of the first things I noticed when I joined social media is that, you know, when you come from athletics, you have to have a certain level of confidence. Like that's just how athletes are. It's like, you know that you can do certain things, and sometimes you'll say it. So I'll say like, you know, I think, yeah, I would say like, oh, I want to be the best. And someone's like, oh, that's so like, why? Like, how can you say that? Like, what? Like, you're so cocky. I'm like, cocky? Like, I'm just telling you guys what I would like to do. I'm putting in the work to do it. I just need some time, but I don't think I'm cocky, right? So when you start doing social media and you start making proclamations about what I'm going to do in a meet or some of the goals that you have, it's kind of like, okay, I put this into the universe. I need to make sure that I make it happen on the platform. So if anything, it's more added pressure for me, and it's like more of like something that's going to hold me accountable. That's just the way I look at it, and that's what I try to tell people. It's like you could flip it into a positive. Like, you know, don't allow yourself to don't dig a hole for yourself by talking a bunch of shit and then getting nervous whenever it's time to kind of like, you know, perform and you can't perform. Just look at it as like, okay, I said all these things I'm going to do. Now is the time to do it. It's kind of like that.
Well, I think there is a difference between talking shit and what you do, because talking shit to me is always something where maybe it's kind of patching over a false confidence or like responding to the fact that people see you as an underdog. And I think people can see that. So I personally view what you're doing as it comes from a place of confidence. I do think, like you talked about, coming from a team sport background, there is a different mentality because you're going to be forced to show that you can back it up. There's going to be someone, like you said, knocking your cleats off, potentially, you know, and not like, oh, I didn't compete this time. You know, I got a lot of stuff going on at home. I'm taking a month off social media. Like it's very much, you decide what you want to show as a powerlifter. You can put it out there on your own. It's all totally self-imposed. And I think we've all benefited from you both deciding to share that journey. But I don't think most powerlifters know what kind of competitive pressures athletes in combat sports or team sports go through. And I think that's probably something you guys are benefiting from.
Yeah, I want to say real quickly is I think the key is to not have the potential for embarrassment. I think that's the one emotion that I think kind of newbies have that you just kind of have to get out of the way. It's like the moment you have a horrible meet, you realize it's not embarrassing. It's just a bad meet. Like if Russ bombed down national, right? It's like he still has everything that he had before, just another thing. Yeah. You know, because it wasn't it Worlds where you delved to like 300 kilograms with the back issue, and then the next year it's totally fine. Like it's not a number that haunts you or anything.
I think a lot of new lifters now, like they get so caught up in having bad performances that they just kind of, I've literally witnessed a dude have a terrible performance and he has stopped powerlifting. I'm like, dog,
Damn.
Dog, you're like 20. Like you have
my career's over.
Exactly. Like I've almost bombed out of like my last meet. I almost bombed out. And I remember after I finished on my third squat, I posted a IG story. I said, me, because I knew it was going to happen. I was like, I talked all this shit leading up to nationals, and I literally almost bombed out. And you know, you just have to. You understand as an athlete, you're gonna have bad performances. It's not about those bad performances. It's about what you're gonna do after that. You know, and I think a lot of new lifters don't really understand that.
Now, Russ, one thing I do want to say is I think you've described the different meets, nationals, and then the IPF Worlds, how it's more chill. You know what, in my opinion, the IPF is missing?
What's up?
Drugs. And I say that because, you know, I've been at a few meets. I've never been backstage at the Arnold or USAPL Nationals. I was at the Arnold's 2018, I believe. And I've probably been to maybe a dozen powerlifting meets. But the most intense atmosphere I've ever witnessed, and I'm not saying this is a good thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm saying it is a thing. Was Boss of Bosses 2. It was the Dan Green powerlifting meet 2015. Andre Milanichev was there. My buddy Jeremy Hamilton was there. Dan Green was competing. This is when Dan Green was like the top dog. Every single meet he basically did in over that 2-year period, he set a world record.
He was the raw lifter.
Yeah. And I will just say, Eric, that what I saw backstage, once again, I'm not going to tell tall tales out of school or some of the things that I saw, but like the level of intensity of just, probably individuals getting hyped up, and maybe there's some game day PEDs and or other things going on. I saw some blood rage in some people's eyes. And I remember, I'm just going to paraphrase what this one person said to Dan, where it's backstage and it's super tense because they're warming up and there's all these competitors and they're these big burly men in honestly like kind of a kid's gymnasium. It's a weird juxtaposition between these world-class lifters and like a high school gymnasium, and shit's getting real. And this one person said, Dan, this is your fucking house. Like just the way that they started going about it, and just like this is the tip of the iceberg. I'm not going to share everything that I heard. I'm going to keep it anonymous. But the intensity level, you would think so. So everyone that has clearly seen, and I hope everyone's watching this, and I hope everyone, once again, that is listening, and Russ, Jonnie, and Eric, of course, you've seen the seminal classic Karate Kid. It's far superior to Rocky. We don't even need to get into that. But the All Valley State karate tournament, where shit is so real, but it's just like a regional, local karate tournament. That was basically Boss of Bosses 2, but for every single lifter. And the amount of looks I saw on the face of people where it's like, I'm going to kill someone for this, was out of this world. So I don't know if that's what needs to change. I do have the question because I'm aware of everyone's time, and we won't take too long with everyone's time. But that's one side. That's one part of powerlifting. And maybe someone else, Jonnie, you'll appreciate this, and I'll tell you guys after who it was. But an equipped lifter told me in person, we're talking the different aspects of powerlifting. He said, I don't really feel as powerlifting unless you have a suit on and knee wraps and you feel like you're going to die. And like just that pressure of like that attempt that you might not make it out of this, like that's really powerlifting. And I just looked at the guy, I'm like, and he was trying to get me like into powerlifting just in general, but that was his gateway. Like, you got to do gear lifting. And I was like, no, I'm good. So let's talk about, you guys have reduced the barrier to entry. So in ways, Russ exposing into more people, showing the bodybuilding side, aesthetics, man, and kind of the lifestyle component of the way, hey, I'm not an automaton here, just like, okay, and I went for 3 for 3, and here were the books. It's like showing a little personality, showing the journey, making it identifiable and relatable. I actually think that's very important. Jonnie, same idea, like kind of, breaking down those barriers, essentially. Like, we're kind of equipped lifting once again. It's like, I don't know about that. These fat dudes powerlifting, you know what I'm saying, doing like kind of even, untested lifting, where it's like, well, wait a second, I'm not like 300 pounds. How am I going to do this? Where do you think the future of powerlifting is headed, or how can social media assist in powerlifting inside the next 10 years? Because Jonnie, I damn well know you have a 30-year game plan. You're not going to share it with us, but you've been correct. You are our Nostradamus over the last several years, and a lot of the things that you've wanted to happen, it seems like it's happened for powerlifting. What's the future hold, my man? Give us a peek into that crystal ball.
Okay, so it's all going to start with virtual reality, and we're going to take it into different then we'll get into CRISPR. But I think what I think overall, it's kind of a theme I've talked with Omar about before, is I think what's going to happen is it's going to be retention. That's going to be the big thing that they have to focus on. Because I think the thing is that, like, even let's say with a guy like Russ, it's like, Russ, you've won, worlds, nationals multiple times. Like, I think the biggest risk for powerlifting would be a guy like you going like, okay, by the time you're even my age of 28, you're 24, right? Somewhere in that range.
25.
25. Yeah, so it's like you could win, basically 6 more very relevant titles as far as worlds, nationals. It's like, I think it is going to be on them to make sure, like with the Sheffield, where they're actually giving out money. And then the question's going to become, in my mind, is if the peak of powerlifting is anywhere from 34 to 37. I believe, Eric, you'd probably know, wasn't there a study that said like 37 plus or minus like 5 years? Something like that.
Plus or minus a pretty big amount. Yeah. And there's more nuance to that, but yes.
So screw it. Or 37 is the magic number. You'll hit your perfect peak. Right?
If you're 38, you got weaker no matter what.
So I think the question's going to be is if there's a guy who's let's say there's an imaginary guy who could beat Russ at 36, and Russ and him are powerlifting. would there be any chance someone would continue with that until that intersection? Obviously, this is, I'm just making this up here, but I think right now there'd be no reason where if you go into powerlifting, you're not like immediately doing well. Like, I think with myself, with the junior success, and then with Russ, it only takes like a few years to get up to the top. And now, how far are you going to go from there? You're going to go super far, maybe 150 pounds in your total, maybe 250 since the first time you really won nationals. So I think the question is going to be is how can they get that fifth to second place staying around, and then seeing their potential? Because right now I don't think they will. And I posted when I barely made primetime that like I was literally the only one who did 2014 nationals who is in primetime now. And it's like that is just a very weird thing in a sport where you have debatably a peak that's like 15 to 20 years as far as maybe not peak, but as far as really near your prime, you could argue. So I think that's going to be the biggest thing. And I think eventually what they're going to need to do is just have some sort of tiered prizes, some sort of way to where you say, okay, maybe it's not a physical prize, but maybe if you make primetime, now you get what they did with the USAPL, you get their Instagram for a day for some people with connections. Right now it's just randomly like Joey. I know Joey did it, Russ's coach, and a few other people. I think eventually, why not make that the prize? Go, okay, you're a coach, you made primetime. You get the USAPL's 200,000 followers for a whole day to just talk about lifting. You could even mention your coaching briefly. I think some sort of community prize like that to keep people into it.
Yeah. Now, I was going to say, Russ, real quick, what about... I was going to say, Russ, real quick, what about you? What would you like to see over after doing the last 3 nationals, winning and being the national champion? I'm just spitballing here, an In-N-Out burger truck outside of the nationals or just something cool. I don't know what you personally feel, but what would you like to see now over the next 5 to 10 years?
Nah, I'm a big proponent of like stepping up the social media game and stepping up the production when it comes to video quality. I think that so what I'm proposing is kind of try to combat what Jonnie was talking about, retention. I think that if you make it more so just about the lifestyle, the look that you get whenever you do powerlifting, I think that you'll have a lot of people staying in powerlifting. I try to preach to my channel, look, man, like not everyone's going to be strong. Like not everyone's going to be able to lift this certain amount of weight. Just focus on just the feeling of a PR. Like I try to get people obsessed with just like, feel just how dominant do you feel when you just hit a weight that you think you couldn't hit? Like regardless of the number, it does not matter. That's what kind of where my phrase "get better today" comes from. It's like just focus on progression. Like the end result is the end result. I always tell people winning is cool, like being the top lifters, whatever, but I'm more so focused like, am I better than I was last year? And I think that's something that people can focus on, right? But when it comes to the production and social media aspect of it, I think that the biggest thing that powerlifting does is drop the ball on that front. I think that as a federation, I think that like kind of what you proposed, Jonnie, whenever you're a primetime lifter, I think that they should dispatch a camera crew to go watch you train for a day and just kind of interview you and have that playing as you're competing. It's like, oh, we have Jonnie Candito here. He trains out of Columbus, Ohio. Like this is what his training's been looking like. And it just literally breaks you cutting. Yeah, I think I'm a pretty good lifter, blah, blah, blah. I've been lifting for years. I've been doing this shit. I'm the OG on the block. I'm going to try to show these young boys what's up. So I think that there's just so many different avenues that they could take in order to grow the sport. And you could have different lifters like saying, oh, like, I want to get to that point. If I lift long enough, I want to get to that point, right? So if you notice with like people that follow me, I try my best not to make it about the specific numbers. I wear Jordans when I lift, dog. Like, you know what I mean? So I was like, oh, like, what's your shoe game looking like in the gym? Like, and people kind of gravitate towards that. And it's not even so much about the weight anymore. It's about, okay, like how fly do I look in the gym? Or, am I taking a certain type of pre-workout when I pull up? Like, it's just different little elements that you could throw into powerlifting to maintain that retention. So I think that we shouldn't focus too much on how long is this person going to stay at the top. Because I personally think that with the talent pool and the way that powerlifting is growing, there might be someone that literally just pulls up and he'll be stronger than me out the gate. Like it's it's almost, to me, it's almost inevitable. And I'm kind of expecting it. I'm like, there's going to be someone that's playing football right now. And it's looking at it, it's like, oh, that's the guy? I could do that. I could do that right now. So, because that's what kind of happened to me. Like, I'm like, oh, that's your guy. I think that's achievable. I've never really focused on powerlifting. So just going back to the question, I think that if you just kind of like sharpened the production when it comes to media, I think that the ceiling is like all the way up here. Because if weightlifting and CrossFit could be there, like, bro, powerlifting under the right management could just like shoot through the roof, in my opinion.
Oof, I love it. I think this is something we've talked a lot about in Iron Culture, and our annoyingly bad dad joke style kind of motto of Iron Culture is exploring the meaning of lift. And I think that what you talked about, both of you, are some pretty key elements. Is there needing to be more incremental rewards. If we're going to focus on the extrinsic, the number, which I agree, Russ, shouldn't be the only focus, we need to have multi-layered opportunities. I remember the federation I used to compete in California, they were all about talking about when you made class 4, class 3, class 2, class 1, master, and elite. But right now, I don't feel like those are out there, but they're relatively new and they're not as well focused on. I think you should get certificates. Like right now, it's basically qualifying for nationals or being the best, you know? And that's just, there's not enough level. So I think exactly that, Jonnie, when people get involved in the sport, if they're primarily have an extrinsic focus, they're going to be gone very shortly, because there's only going to be about 30 people who, maybe 100, who literally are going to be able to be in contention in any given weight class, any given time, to feel like maybe that could be me. Yeah. And that's not a lot of people. So I think, Russ, what you're getting at is you're emphasizing the culture of the sport and giving people a sense of belonging and a shared experience. And then by not focusing on the number, but the feeling, you're focusing on the process. Like, imagine if basketball, going back to the MJ thing, it's like, yeah, I'll keep playing basketball if I think I can legitimately be as good as Michael Jordan. There would be 5 people playing basketball. But the reality is basketball's fun, you know? Yeah. And nobody talks about that with powerlifting, because you get introduced to it at a place way after the point, and at least in the States and in Western culture, where we tell people that sport is also about these other things. Yeah. Like, if you get into sport in your 20s or 30s, you're kind of thinking like, oh, this is the point where I'm competing now. I'm an adult. I'm not playing a silly game, you know? And I think that's really, really unfortunate. Like, emphasizing the experience and all the other things that come as a benefit of lifting is, I think we poo-poo that. We make light of it. We treat it as though it's not serious, when I think most lifters are just as serious whether or not they're going to ever hit a 500-pound deadlift or not. You know what I'm saying? And I think we have to respect that. We have to honor that. And I think we have to give everyone that opportunity to feel as though that their progression is just as important as anyone else's. And yeah, it's fun to watch MJ because he's an absolute, you know, like freak outlier. But that shouldn't be the carrot, because that carrot you never get to eat, you know. But all the carrots you talked about, Russ, feeling like you're a part of something, getting empowerment is essentially what you were talking about, that feeling of squashing a PR. That is something everyone can experience. And I think we do have to exploit that, and do so with good quality, and do so in a well-done way on social media. So I agree with both of you.
Yeah, I'd like to say real quickly is I think one of the risks, I think one of the bounces, I think what you said about classes was perfect. Like, that's probably the best compromise of what I'm going to say, is that one of the problems is someone could hear Russ say that and go, okay, like, it's about the culture, it's about meat, you're feeling good, hitting it. Why do a meet? Like, I just killed my PR. Like, my boy said I'm killing it. Like, I'm with my boy. Why do I need a judge who I don't know, I don't care about, tell me my lift is good?
You're speaking right to me.
Yeah, I do think that, like, kind of gamifying of that. It's kind of like what Bryce Lewis posted recently, of like gamifying things, kind of like how you have achievements, stickers, things like that. I definitely think that there needs to be that bridge. And honestly, I'd say some other thoughts is that, first of all, I think the IPF needs to drop the IOC idea, because they're never going to get in the Olympics. Like, I'm very enthusiastic in that idea, because I think what's going to happen is there's going to be like some random corporate type of opportunity, very similar to Thor being on ESPN, Very similar to Jessica. Jessica, is it Beutner? Is that how you pronounce it?
I think it's Beutner.
Beutner, is it? Yeah, like she was shared by SportsCenter. It's like there are going to be these random moments sprinkled in where we honestly don't do anything. It's kind of like Omar shouting me out, where it's like I never asked for like Omar to shout me out, like ever. It was just like a random thing. It's like, oh damn, like that was just like kind of gas in the engine, and then you do what you want with it. I think that's going to happen to powerlifting. Like I honestly think as long as it keeps doing this and just sharpening, that then it will get to that point. And I hope they don't get lost in international organizations saying you need this amount of people, and really pursuing something that, in my opinion, has no chance of happening. And you could do something cool, too, is that you could say, okay, maybe a way to differentiate powerlifting meets from at-home lifting is maybe we have slow-mo cameras for judging depth. And then you can imply, look, if you don't have a slow-mo camera, we have 200 frames per second. You will never get that anywhere else. Your squat is legitimate. Like we have the exact points and people can see it. Just something like that elevates it to a different level than a gym lift. Very similar to what calibrated plates already does, but just a bigger level to make people feel like that validation also matters. I think that's going to be really important. And it kind of ties to the media thing, where you feel like this is a different experience that you couldn't even do it if you tried to do it. At Nationals, there's a Jumbotron thing. Like you couldn't do that if you tried to.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
it is your chance. I think. Yeah. Go ahead, Russ.
Oh, I was just gonna say they're trying. They're putting effort. Like I would say that the last couple of Raw Nationals, it's like damn, they're really pushing it. I remember 2 Nationals ago, like they had this weird little setup to where the warm up room was downstairs, and then whenever you go to do your bench squat and deadlift, you would have to walk through like the crowd, but they would have it like sectioned off. So it's like literally like. The crowd can touch you as you're walking by. They're like, oh, like, good luck, Sean. Or like, oh, bro, kill him. Oh, you got it. Like, blah, blah. And like, you just kind of like walk up and like, touch hands and shit like that. So there's little things that they play around with that's adding a lot of value to actually being there at those top level meets. Jonnie just also mentioned having like the big projector thing in the back or the big screen. That was another element that was like really, really cool. Like you can literally watch like instant replay almost like, you can see yourself lifting. Yeah. So there's just a lot of cool elements they're adding to it. So they are trying. I just see like different avenues where I'm like, bro, if y'all just like did this, like,
I think it's also about how do you promote a competition? Is a competition just about winning on the day? Because in powerlifting, I've won my class in meets. It means nothing, like it goes on back in the day, Powerlifting Watch, and now in modern times, Open Powerlifting, or it goes in the IPF ranking system, like it doesn't really matter if I've won a meet out of 3 other like relatively novice 198s back in like 2009 or something like that, So I think if we emphasize the aspect of, it's a competition, but it's a chance to get your personal improvements validated and show that you can do it under meet conditions with pressure, with timing. It's not on. It was the same reason why, Russ, you weren't a big fan of half doors deadlift. It's like, he had a referee. Yes, there were calibrated plates, but he got to do it on his own timetable. He got to do it in his own comfort zone gym. There wasn't other lifters around him. And, I understand the arguments. People could say that, when Eddie did it, it was similar, but it was public and whatever. But I think the important thing about powerlifting is, you're only going to get this certificate to be a class 3 lifter if you do it with our judges, if you do it on game day, if you do it with pressure, if you have to do it counting your warm-ups with all the other people in your flight. So I think emphasizing that rather than why would I go there to compete if I'm going to place 15th? It's like, again, it's about you and your numbers will only really count if you do it in that format. So I think you guys both make really good points about that.
Yeah, like imagine if you went into Nationals and you go like they have that SportsCenter style interview, and then you go like you represent your state, be like, I'm the Ohio State champion, and then just have like the highlight. I feel like that sense of like representing something, because it's like at Worlds where it's like where you really feel like you represent the U.S. on some level. It's kind of crazy. Like,
Absolutely.
I think some people really, I remember, I think it was actually Gibbs once, who, and again, this is not to throw him under the bus, but I think one time he was like implying that they should just not tie it to nations because so many of the best lifters are from the US and all that. He just wanted to face the best lifters. I remember thinking like, no, like that's not going to fly with most American lifters. Yeah.
Yeah, nah, because you're kind of right. Whenever you get invited to IPF Worlds, it's like, like people look at it as like, oh, you're representing the whole country. So there's an aspect to it that's very serious when it comes to piloting. So I don't.
Yeah, did you have like all the relatives, like all your because that's what it was like, where it's like all the
my dad, bro, my dad rides that title, man. Gosh, like Nigeria. It's funny because Nigerian officials have actually reached out to give me because I'm Nigerian, right? They've actually reached out to give me like a homecoming, like an interview, like a plane and all. I was just like, I'm not even gonna lie to you.
Say plane?
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Oh man, that's real.
So like they want me to come down there, and it's just like I feel disingenuous because I know like it's not like the Olympics. Like it was just it's like a small niche competition that I was able to represent the U.S. in. Like that's pretty much it.
But you still take that, Russ. No, you take that. You go. No, that's bro.
I'd feel weird. That's not, hell no.
Hey, I just got to say, being a national hero, that's what's up. Where I was going to say, I forget the Iranian lifter, Hassan Rezazadeh, when he won. And he won the Olympics and he did all that stuff. And he came back and he had a hero's welcome. So I actually think there is something where it then becomes more than just about the lifter, where there's that national pride that lends itself to people. It's like once you see that celebration, and I think that actually, as a spectator, one of the great aspects of the Olympics, weightlifting in particular, is when the Chinese national team, I've said this before, when they come out, the coach will yell basically for the glory of the country or something similar to that, to paraphrase, and the athlete will affirm like, yes, indeed, or whatnot. And like the audience is loving it, where it heightens the spectacle. And then, of course, you get more drama, more this, more that, and you have the dynasties and all those things that occur. So, yeah, I personally think for IPF Worlds, you keep it as is.
Yeah.
For sure. Well, hey, I think we've covered a lot. We've taken up a lot of your gentlemen's time, which we appreciate. And I think the last thing we normally do is we give both guests the opportunity to, if there's anything we didn't quite cover or that you want to add or things that you want to leave the listeners with before we sign off, the floor is yours. So Russ, we'll start with you.
For the most part, I just kind of want to echo what I spoke about earlier. If you're a person that's listening to this podcast and you're new to lifting, try not to focus so much on what I guess like quote unquote top lifters are doing, the numbers that they're doing. Just kind of focus on the things that you can control in terms of being obsessed with just once again the feeling of lifting weights. Like I remember when I first started out, I was more obsessed with just like feeling like I was on top of the world when I hit a weight that I couldn't previously hit. Focus on things that you enjoy about the gym, not about obsessing over a certain type of lifter that you may never catch, I would say just focus on the feeling, focus on the experience, and enjoy your time inside the gym because not everyone gets to enjoy that. So that's pretty much what I'll leave you guys with.
Awesome. And where can people find you, Russ?
They can find me on Instagram, YouTube, Twitter. Because I know Johnny's not as big on Twitter, but I'm like, it's funny. Twitter is actually the most active, Twitter's the social media that I'm most active on. Like Twitter's my favorite app, but you can find me on all my social medias by Russel.
Russel, awesome. We'll make sure to get all of that in the notes and links out to everything we can for the podcast episode. Jonnie, final words.
I would say overall, I think the main theme really that connects all of us on here is that we just tried things and just didn't know what was going to happen. Like actually, what's funny is something I didn't really get to is like when I made my 100 subscriber video and really went the hardest was when I truly did not talk to anybody for like 1 to 2 months, like literally no friends. It was like probably the only point in my life where it was like truly like that. And a lot of times I think you can, especially in sport powerlifting, you can just approach it with the mentality of like, look, you don't know what's going to happen necessarily. A lot of people never do their first meet. Why not just do it? See what happens. It's just like putting something up online. Like just see what happens. Just fling it. I've been in some weird. There was one time where I had a conversation with the University of Cincinnati, like D1 school, on like, could I do the decathlon? Like I literally just sat down and talked to him. Like, no, I don't think so. I was like, okay. That was basically it. Because my brother was pretty good at the decathlon. And, like I was stronger than him, but I was shorter than him. And it's like, all right. Yeah, and really not feeling that embarrassment. And I think that's really the common theme among us, is that if you're going to do something like this and elevate it, you have to maybe do something that none of your friends do. Maybe not one of them do it. They see your meet. They'll probably be bored if they stay for more than an hour, but if they see your third squat, then they might kind of catch the bug and just kind of want to do it and just see what happens. And if you have a meet that goes poorly or two, it's worth repeating that powerlifting is an incredibly cheap sport relative to other ones. Mm-hmm. So look, you lose $50 in a day in just like 6 hours of your day, and that's it. So that'd be my thing. Just do it. Just try it and then see what happens.
I love it. So Jonnie, if people want to see you embarrassing yourself for $50, where can they find you?
Yeah, I'd say, my version of Twitter really would be right now. Instagram is really where I post, I'd say, the most relative to YouTube. So I'd say Instagram, Candito Training, and then YouTube, Candito Training. Luckily, the name Candito is fairly rare. So if you literally just Google Candito, I believe I show up. It's like me and my dad being a lawyer. But I'm first. So.
Awesome. Fantastic. We'll make sure we get that in the show notes as well. Omar, do you have the battery juice to close this out, or should we do it separately?
I got it, my man. I got it. We're going to do it.
Bring us home.
I'm going to say I want to thank both of the guests for being on, and I hate to do this because normally we want everyone to feel welcome, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it. Russ, quick question. So my crop top is on the way, right?
I was kind of unclear. Okay, good. Yeah.
What's on?
Because I'm trying to get better today, okay? But I can't feel it unless I got the spike. Okay, good. I didn't want to end on a downer here. I didn't want to. Okay, whew. Well, I just want to thank both of you for being on. I think this is a fantastic conversation. I think both of you have had a tremendous impact on the sport of powerlifting, and it's really cool to see those that are passionate about what they do able to share it with more and more people. And it is a passion-driven, outcome. And I said that before, and I said that about Russ just being, a fantastic athlete. I am pretty damn sure you could just leave powerlifting if you wanted to, and you would just have a successful social media career. Like there's other ways and other avenues of you making money. So to stay in the game and representing it, that's what's up. Jonnie just dedicating himself to want to wear that, polo shirt.
Yeah, if I left, I would crash. My father would just disappear.
Jonnie, this is it for me. Imagine you just announce like I'm leaving powerlifting, but you don't give but also Jonnie, you don't give the next step. So it's just like a cliffhanger. You're like, ooh.
Yeah, just no.
And then you wait 2 years to update everyone. I'm like, oh, these are all bad choices right here.
You get like 5,000 views, you realize like, oh, it's over. It's really over. I'm super afraid of that.
Jonnie, you thought it was gonna build anticipation, but it just dissipated everything. You're like, ooh. Worst call of my life. You send a text to the homies like, Russ, hey man, can you shout out my latest video? No one's responding to your text. You're like, shit.
I actually had a moment like that where Nick Wright once messaged me while I was in my year break. Like 10 months into it, he's like, man, you're pushing it. Like, I don't know what's gonna happen. He's like, how about you come back, man? Like, hurry this thing up.
You're this close to being irrelevant. I just want you to know that you're on that precipice. I love it, bro. So I will make sure to shout everyone's social media, and you'll get that 30,000 listener bump. Candito, don't you worry about a thing. If you're listening on iTunes, you made it all the way to the end. And I'm talking specifically about iTunes because we do try and ask individuals to write reviews. Eric, we received 2 last week, and guess what? They're 5-star. Yeah, maybe I paid them, but they are nonetheless genuine. We are currently battling.
Thank you, by the way.
Yeah, no worries. It only costs $100. There's nothing. It's far less embarrassing than $50 in 6 hours, like a powerlifting meet. So I thought it was worth it. I will say that we are doing an eternal battle with Sex with Dr. Emily. We're very confident we could replace her because there's more to Iron Culture than simply lifting. It's lifting, culture, history, and the science of it. And if you're on YouTube and you're still listening, go ahead and leave a comment. We'll do our best to respond. We're here every single Monday from now until eternity. Peace.